What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. So as you can tell, we got a little bit different of a setup right now. I'm kind of in the middle of rearranging the whole office, and I just set up a new PC. I'll put a little bit of clips so you guys can see what it looks like from my view. But I set this up. I actually filmed the whole behind the scenes vlog building my own PC, which took a long time. So that's for the members. So if you're a member on the channel, make sure you check that out. But today, what we're going to be talking about is an article that has been sent to me many times about obesity in Canada. Now, this article is on CNN Health, and it's called "In Canada, Obesity Will No Longer Be Determined by Weight Alone." Now, I will say when I first heard that headline, I was like I was interested, right? I was interested in the article. I've read through it a couple times, but I want to go through it with you guys and share my thoughts. A group of physicians in Canada issued new guidelines this week urging doctors in the country to take a new approach in the way they treat patients with obesity. The physicians, who are part of the nonprofit Obesity Canada and the Canadian Association of Bariatric Physicians and Surgeons, believe doctors have not been treating patients with obesity the way they should be. In their view, weight discrimination impedes treatment, and medicine has made little room for body positivity. Now, just with the first part of that article, I would say that I actually do agree with that. I think that there are a lot of doctors that they only look at the weight, right? They only look at the weight, or they only look at the BMI, and they're like, any ailment, you just have to lose weight and everything will be fine. And that is obviously just not the case. So I think that it is a good thing that these people are pushing to try and not just only be focusing on the weight, but focusing on other things as well. Obesity, they argue, should be defined by a person's health rather than just their weight. The guidelines, which were published this week in the Canadian Medical Association Journal, recommended that obesity be classified as a chronic illness that requires tailored treatment and long-term care. The authors also encourage doctors to stop relying on BMI, or body mass index, alone when it comes to diagnosing their patients. By that definition, people would only be diagnosed as obese if their body weight affects their physical health or mental well-being, said Dr. Arya Sharma, professional of medicine at the University of Alberta, Edmonton, and scientific director of Obesity Canada, who co-wrote the guidelines. Now, I do like that they are focusing, again, less on just BMI, because we've talked about it before, but if you were to track my BMI, I am considered obese, right? And so if my doctor only looked at my BMI and was like, you're obese, you need to lose weight, I would say that that's probably negligence on their part, right? Like, they could obviously be doing a much better job. And I especially like that it talks about if it affects your physical health or mental well-being. I think that is something that can absolutely happen when you are overweight, something that happened to me a lot. It doesn't happen to everyone, though, and some people are a lot more comfortable being a little bit heavier than some other people. So I think this, honestly, from what I've seen, this seems like a great start. This is a huge departure from the notion that you can step on a scale and diagnose obesity, Sharma said. This has nothing to do with size or shape or anything else. It's simply the question, is your body fat impairing your health? Now, that right there was probably my favorite part of the article. I love that. Is your body fat impairing your health? When we talk about health, right, a lot of us think of, are you diabetic? Or when we're talking about obesity, right? Are you diabetic? Are you, do you have high blood pressure? And all of these things. But in reality, health is much more than that, right? Are your knees messed up? Are your ankles hurting you? Are your legs swollen? Like, are you able to get out of a seat comfortably, right? Like, there's so many more things that go into health other than just, oh, my blood levels are fine and all of my lab test results seem to be okay. 5 steps to better obesity treatment. The new guidelines provide a 5-step roadmap for doctors to follow when treating patients with obesity. And then there's this guideline right here that has the five steps. We're not going to read through the whole thing, but the 5 steps are: ask permission, assess their story, advise on management, agree on goals, assist with drivers and barriers. The first step, an approach Sharma joked was very Canadian, encourages doctors to ask their patients whether they feel comfortable discussing their weight. If they are and they want to pursue treatment, then doctors can move forward. I also really like this because it takes away the doctor just assuming that you want to talk about your weight and just putting all of these things on you. Because a lot of us, when we are overweight, it might be uncomfortable, but if a doctor asked you, hey, is it okay if we talk about this? I really think that maybe your weight could be improved upon. I'm sure a lot of people are going into the doctor and they know that their weight is causing them problems. So I think that is a good start. In this stage, doctors should also learn to reconsider obesity not as a personal failure, but as a chronic illness that isn't curable with a temporary diet or even a major procedure like bariatric surgery. As a result, it requires long-term care from a physician. Again, I mean, all of this stuff is stuff that I agree with. There's nothing that I'm seeing that I'm like, wow, that is ridiculous. Again, they're saying what I've said so many times, right? A quick fix diet is not going to solve obesity for most people. It is much more involved than that. And if we can get doctors that know a lot more about that and are willing to put in a lot more time with patients, I think that could be a good thing. Obesity management has to be based on the principles of chronic disease management, which means any quick fix, none of that is going to have a long-term impact, Sharma told CNN. Obesity is considered a serious medical condition that occurs when a patient has a dangerous amount of excess weight. About 30% of Canadian adults have obesity, according to Obesity Canada, while the number rises to over 42% among Americans. It's linked to severe conditions like heart disease, cancer, and sleep disorders, according to the National Institutes of Health, but obesity is a complex condition of its own, one that can be caused by genetic, psychological, or environmental factors, among others, Sharma said. It's a physician's duty to identify those causal factors in their patient, chart a course for tailored treatment, and cooperate with the patient along the way, he said. Steps 2 through 4 of the recommendations. Not all treatment options for patients with obesity involve losing weight, Sharma said. If a patient eats healthier food, exercises often, and is showing overall signs of improved health without losing weight, then they're succeeding. Now, right there, The one thing that I will say, for the most part, I agree with that. But if someone is severely overweight, they have 100 pounds of excess weight, if they are doing all the things that they just mentioned, most likely, right, they're going to lose weight. That's just going to happen. If they're not taking care of all of these things, and now they are, most likely weight is going to come down. I don't care what's going on the scale, he said. The real question is, does my patient feel better? The problems related to obesity are those conditions now better controlled. That may or may not take weight loss. And again, like I've said many, many times before, losing weight should be about improving the quality of your life. And a lot of times, these healthier habits, for most people that are severely overweight, weight loss is probably going to happen if you focus on those things. Fifth step involves assisting patients with barriers to meet their goals, whatever they may be. It is a doctor's job to be supportive and identify those barriers before they come up so they don't stifle a patient's success per the new guidelines. Weight loss has become a polarizing and knotty topic in medicine. The stigma of obesity has impeded existing treatments. The team of Canadian doctors writes in their guidelines, doctors may write off patients with obesity as lacking in willpower or irresponsible, Sharma said, or may even bring up their weight when it's not pertinent. The biased treatment is enough to drive people with obesity away from medicine for good, he said. Again, for the most part, I agree with everything that this article is saying, but the one thing I do think is important is that we shouldn't take all of the responsibility off of the person, right? Because I was someone that had obesity, and I know, looking back, it was because I was making really terrible decisions, and I was being lazy, and I didn't have much willpower, right? And so I don't think there's anything wrong with maybe talking about those things and, being like, hey, if you eat really terrible food, this is what's going to happen to you. But I do think that if people are going to the doctor and the doctor, instead of shaming them for their weight, is actually giving them genuine advice and really, really becoming a partner in their health, this is only going to be a good thing, right? Do I agree with everything that this article is saying? No, not necessarily. But I do think, again, for me, I just want people to live the healthiest lives possible. And if this helps that fact, then I am all for it. These guidelines are an excellent upgrade from the former approach to obesity, said Sylvia Lay, an assistant professor in the Department of Epidemiology at Tulane University, who was not involved with the study. The new guideline attempts to address obesity as a complex disease to be managed using a combination approach. Lay wrote to CNN in an email. It also recognizes the importance of patient-centered, individually tailored approaches. And I think that that's really important, right? Like when people are trying to lose weight, one of the biggest problems I have is people send me really, really basic questions. But the thing is I can't answer those questions because I don't know everything that this person is going through, but their doctor obviously should know a little bit more about that stuff. So having these like more tailored programs for these people with obesity, and again, if they're going into the doctor's office, they're talking about these things, it's obviously something that they want to work on. And I think, again, all in all, it's for the best. The guidelines aren't perfectly aligned with the fat acceptance movement. Though Sharma said the guidelines were created with the cooperation and input of people with obesity, many fat-positive activists reject the belief that fatness is a disease or a defect. Ali Thompson, a writer, YouTuber, and fat activist, told CNN that characterizing fatness as a disease turns a normal human variation into a problem that has to be solved. Again, obviously, I disagree with that. I think that being severely overweight to where, like we're talking about here in this article, where it is impeding your health, that's obviously a negative, right? That is something that we should work on. And it's crazy to me that even with this article, where they have obviously made like every attempt to be as, politically correct as possible and be as understanding as possible and give as many options as possible, there are still people that are like, this is ridiculous, this is so wrong. And now you're like, it's crazy that even this has people that are upset about it, right? Guidelines could also leave room for discrimination among doctors, Thompson said. Any standard of care for fat people that doesn't begin and end with treat them like thin people is inadequate, she said. She also disagrees with calling obesity an epidemic, as the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the National Institutes of Health have. It's extremely dehumanizing to be talked about in the same way as a virus, she said. I can see where she's coming from, with what she's saying. But again, like, you can't treat someone that has obesity like you would treat a thin person because they are different, right? Just like you wouldn't treat a smoker the same as you would treat a non-smoker. If someone comes into your, I'm assuming if a doctor has someone come into their office and they're a chain smoker and they're smoking all the time and they're saying, it's hard for me to breathe, they would probably be like, okay, maybe we should stop smoking, right? So, of course, you would treat the smoker a little bit different than you would treat the non-smoker. I feel like that makes sense. Like, health researchers and fat acceptance activists may disagree when it comes to obesity, how to describe it, and whether it requires medical intervention, but Sharma said the guidelines aren't designed to force people into accepting treatment. If someone isn't interested in changing anything about themselves, then they shouldn't be made to, as long as their health isn't in jeopardy, he said. I totally agree with that. I think that that's a great point. Again, like I was saying earlier, it's obviously, this is about people that are coming to the doctor's office, having conversations with their doctor, and they're saying, hey, I am not happy with where I am. How can we work on this? And their doctor is becoming a teammate for that person. Before, we had one recommendation: eat less, move more, Sharma said. But that was just one narrow view of a complicated condition of which there's no one root cause. The guidelines, Sharma and his colleagues hope, open a window for a more sympathetic view of obesity, one that centers around patients. Now, that is the whole article. Again, so as far as like my views on the whole article, I think that this honestly is a good step in the right direction. I think that it's a really middle of the road approach. It's not saying like, just eat less, move more. You should just get it together. You should just figure it out, right? Because again, obviously that is not working for everybody. I do think that does work for a lot of people. Worked for me, right? Like, it's not obviously broken. I do think that it can be helpful for people, but I do think with working with a lot of people, there are so many other factors that go into it. So having more options, and again, it seems like teaching these doctors and showing them ways to better help someone and having these doctors be better equipped to deal with people that have obesity is only a positive. Like, I know that there are certain little things that I disagree with in the article, but overall, I think this is a step in the right direction. It is not too far of like, oh, it's okay to be big and like your weight doesn't affect your health at all, right? Because that's obviously not true, and that's not what they're saying here. But they are saying, okay, well, let's work on weight, and we understand that it's not as easy as eat less, move more, just figure it out kind of thing, right? Like doctors are now kind of taking a step, at least in Canada, it seems like taking a step to become partners with people with obesity that are looking to actually improve their health. And a lot of times that's probably going to happen through losing weight. But all in all, I would love to know what you guys think down in the comment section down below. I think that this is a really, really interesting approach, and I think that it can be a good thing. But again, I would love to know what you guys think down in the comment section down below. And if you do want to read the article again, I will also link that in the description. Before we end, I want to say huge thank you to all of my channel members at the top tier. So I want to say thank you to Rachel Reduces, Roy Perry, Genesee Morales, Determined Danny, Sixto Sounds, Jocelyn, and Emily Love. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. If you guys do want to join, there should be a join button right under me, and I'll shout you guys out in the videos as well. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. There was one other thing that I wanted to say. Oh yeah, look how buff I am.
Obey the warning signs, and when there are flashing lights or wigwags, don't attempt to cross until they come to a complete stop.